Kami here. This is part 4 in my new login and register tutorial series. We have designed what every page in the app looks like, and we've also set up the database. Now in this tutorial, we're going to allow a user to register, and in the next, we're going to allow a user to log in. So there's only 2 more to go, guys. Come on. So the first thing I want you guys to do is to head over to the project, right click, and create a new Java class file. And I want you guys to name this register request, and make this class extend string request. This is where volley comes in useful. Now I'll explain to you what this class will do. This class will basically allow us to make a request to the register.php file on the server and get a response as a string, which is why we're extending string request. So we need to specify the URL where our register.php file is at. So private static. It's static because it's not going to change throughout the program, and that's why it's final too. And it's a string, obviously, because we're storing a URL. So register request URL, that's what I'll just name the variable. And now to get your URL from 000 web hosts, you just go on the cPanel and you can see domain. This is my URL, right? I'll just go on the link, get that, and then paste it in there. And now since we want the register.php file, we just add that to the end, register.php. So now we have a URL to the register.php file. Now we need to create a map. I'll explain to you guys what this map does in a few minutes. And let's call it params. Now we need to create a constructor for this class. And the constructor is the first method that runs when an instance of this class is created. So to create a constructor, public, and then you give the name of the class, so register request. And now the constructor can ask for certain things when it's created. And what we want this constructor to ask for is, since it's a registration, we want it to ask for a name, username. And keep in mind, we're going to use this register request class in a few minutes, so you understand how I pass these information to the constructor. And finally, password. Oh, one more thing that the constructor needs is a response listener. You'll also see how this is used in a few minutes. So all these will be passed to the constructor when an instance of this class is created. Now we need to pass some data to Volley, which will allow it to execute our request for us. And the way we do that is by writing super, and then first thing we need to pass to it is the method, and the method we want to use is method.post, which basically means we're going to send some data to register.php, and register.php is going to respond with some data. Next, we need to give Volley the URL of the request which we created up here, remember? And then we need to give it the listener. And what this listener is when Volley has finished with the request, it's going to inform this listener right here. We also need to give it an error listener, which Volley will inform if an error goes wrong with the request, but we're not going to worry about that in this tutorial, so we're just going to leave that as null, which basically means nothing. So now we've given Volley all the data that it needs. If you go back to the register.php file, you remember that it needed a name, age, username, and password when it's executed. So we need a way to make Volley also pass this information to the request. And the way we do that is by using the params. So the first thing we need to do is we actually need to create the param, and we do that by saying params is equal to new hash map. So this creates a new hash map, right? And now we need to actually put the data into the hash map, and we do that by params.put. And now remember, we need to put name, age, username, and password. So name, and the name, it's given up here in the request. Now we need to put the username. Remember, that's also given up there. The password. And finally, age. Keep in mind, you have to add a string to it to basically convert it from an integer to a string. Okay, so now we've put all the data into the params. We need Volley needs to basically access this data, and we do that by writing get params, and then you write enter, and that's basically it. So just to summarize, when the request is executed, Volley will call get params, and get params will return params, which we have already filled with all the data that is needed up here. Okay, so now we're done with the register request. We actually have to use it and pass all these information to it. So head over to the register activity. We wanted that when the user clicks register, we'll get the information from the fields and then pass it to register request and then execute the request. So the first thing we need to do is add a listener to the register button. And remember, we've done this before, so it's new view.onClick listener. So when the user clicks register, we need to actually get all the information that they've entered, and we're going to create a string variable. It's final because it's not going to change, and we need to get the name from the name field, and we do that by etName.getText. This will get the text, and then we need to convert it to a string. So this gets the text from the name field and then stores it in the name variable. And we need to do this for age, username, and password. So let's do username. So we get it from et username. Sorry about that. And then same with password. We get it from et password. And then for the age, we want it to be an integer, and then we want to get the age. But this is going to give an error because it's a string, but we want to get it. We want to convert it to an int, and the way you do that is by integer.parseInt. Remember, capital integer, and then put everything in there. So what this does is it gets the age and then converts it to an int, and then makes that equal to the variable. Okay, now we've done that, we actually have to now create a request, and we do that by saying register request. This is saying the type, and we're going to name the variable. I'll just name it register request with a lowercase r, and that's equal to new register request. So this is actually creating a request. And remember, what does a request want? It wants a name, username, age, and password. So name, username, age, and password. The final thing it wants is a response listener, which we actually have to create up here to pass to it. So to create a response listener, it's very easy. Response dot listener, and then we want it to be a string response listener, because remember, this requires a string response listener, and let's just name it response listener. And now again, new response listener, right? As you can see, there's an error there. If you click on the error and click implement methods, just make sure you have a semicolon at the end. So here we've created our response listener. Now we can pass our response listener to the register request. So anything in here happens when the response has been executed. And Volley will also give us the response right here. So this is the response from the register.php. Now we need to basically convert it to a JSON object, because remember, we encoded it into a JSON string. So now we need to convert it to a JSON object so we can work with it here. And so JSON object, and that's equal to new JSON object, and we need to give it the response. So it gets the string that that Volley has given to us and converts it into a JSON object. Actually, I'll just change this variable to be JSON response. And now we have an error here because this can basically fail if response is not in the form of a JSON string. So we need to surround it with a try and catch. So if you click on the error and click surround with try and catch, it just surrounds it. So if anything goes wrong here, then it will catch the error and print it out. Okay, so now we have a JSON response. We can actually get the response. So remember, when we register, the response is a success, right? So we need to actually get that. So we'll create a boolean, because remember it's true, so it's a boolean, it's either true or false. We say JSON response dot get boolean success, because we called it success over here. So now what this does is when the request is executed and Volley gives us a response, it will check success. It will get the value of success and make that equal to this variable. So now we have that. All we have to do simply now is if it's successful, if the registration is successful, we want to create a new intent, basically just to take them back to the login page. Remember, you do that using an intent. So register activity dot this, and now we want to take them to the login page. So login activity dot class. And now to actually start the activity, register activity dot this dot start activity. We've all done this before, and then put the intent in there. So what this does is if it's successful, it will take them back to the login page. But now if it's not successful, what we want to do is we want to display an error, and the way we do that is by using the alert dialog. So this will display an error to the user dot builder equals to builders. So we have to actually create the alert dialog and then register it, pass the register activity dot this to it, and just remove that. So this will create an alert dialog. Sorry, spelling mistake there. And now to actually show a message in the dialog, we just say set message. Let's just set it to something like register failed. And then we need to actually set a button in the dialog box, and I'm just going to make the button say retry and just put a null there. And finally we need to create it and then show it. So what this does is, like I said before, it will create a error message and say register failed, and when the user clicks retry, it would allow them to retry the registration again. So now the final thing we need to do with the request is that we actually have to add it to a request queue. So firstly we have to create a request queue. I'll just call it a queue, and then we have to basically get the queue from Volley, because Volley basically holds all the request queue, and we pass it register activity dot this. Now we actually have to add the register request to the queue. Now one final thing before we can actually test this is we have to add an internet permission to the app, because we're going to need to be able to access the internet, and you do that by going on the Android manifest, users permission, and we want internet. So just search for internet, and that should be it. We are ready to test the app, so just click run. So now if you click register here, enter name, username, password, and an age, and click register. It should take you to the login page as we programmed it to. And now if we go to our database and click browse, you can see it's been uploaded, so register has been fixed. So that's it for this tutorial, guys. In the next one we're going to fix login, and that will be it for the tutorial series. Now remember, if you have any problems, just comment it below, or you can comment it, or you can post it on my Facebook. Thanks guys, thanks for watching.